Hello, Father.
Hi, Charles. How are you?
I'm well. So, what have you been up to lately?
Well, I finally got around to renewing my passport today after it expired in September.
And I remember knowing your passport expired because when we were in Italy, you technically can only enter Italy with 6 months left on validity of your passport, but
I made it in.
Somehow made it in and no one checked you because I was nervous. You got on the plane. Who was it? Whatever airline it was, the budget airline that didn't
or something.
Check you and stop you. Yeah. And then the Italians didn't stop you. And alas, you got to be in Italy for a little while and then you've got it renewed now. So how was the renewal? Did you do the online or the in-person?
I did online and then I realized I needed a photo. So I went to CVS, which was, I went during it's like rush hour, like 3:30. They were very understaffed. So I was waiting in line and I was like, I'll wait. It's fine. And then someone had to take my photo and I had to take my vest off, which was very perturbing. And then he took like 10 photos and then we were going through the kiosk thing and he goes, "Oh, I forgot to ask you to take off your glasses." And so I went back.
So you have like 40 photos from CVS of you not smiling with and without glasses.
And the sad thing is like the photos with my glasses on, it's going to sound terrible. They were actually like pretty good. And I didn't know how to ask, like, can I get those? Like, maybe your headshot.
for your when you have to put your mugshot up, you can do that. Well, because you can't wear glasses unless you medically cannot see without them, I think is the rule. You can't wear a hat unless it's required for religious reasons.
Oh, I should have worn my Beretta. That would have been so much fun.
But you're not required to wear a hat for religious reasons. You have the choice of wearing a Beretta. And Costumes Repellents of the Catholic Church says the Beretta is not secular wear out and about. So you could maybe pulled off a Zucchetto, right?
Yeah, well, you
could have done that. A black one.
Black.
No one has seen it. Maybe a little bit of it.
Yeah, just over the top. The little pointy thing that you grab to take off. Whatever. There's a technical term for that.
Yeah. There's a technical term. It's called a knot of thread that you can have. But you also can't wear military uniform or any uniform unless it's, again, required for religious reasons. So I guess if you're in the Salvation Army, you could wear military uniform. And you also can't wear camouflage in a passport photo. So were you tempted to wear your camouflage casket or casket?
Well, you always have death on the mind, Charles. No. And in fact, this is a debate I had with another priest friend, whether or not I should take the passport photo in clerics or in mufti, layman's clothes. And I said, it makes sense to do it in clerics. I fly mostly in clerics. Sometimes depends on the nature of the trip, but usually I'm not in clerics on the flight. So I thought that would make sense. And he was saying, well, what if you have to get into a country where they won't let you get in? And because of clerics. And I said, well, where are you traveling?
I can think of a few countries where you may not be allowed to have public expressions of non-local religion.
Right. And I don't know why I would go there.
It also brings up a valuable point. Yes, because you're not open to beheadings, right? You don't want to risk that. So
not yet.
You may want to avoid. Not yet. But we always should desire martyrdom, but not make it super easy, right?
Yeah, it's my favorite. I think it's the, I'm going to get this wrong. It's Isaac Jogues or Francis Xavier. It's a Jesuit saint. His office of the readings is how he's ready to die a martyr. And he goes on this beautiful prose of how he's to do it. And then he goes, or if God wills something else, I'll accept that. And we always just laugh. It's very like a Jesuitical thing to just like go through this prose and be like, but also like, nah.
You basically, do both sides of that coin. But yeah, no, the passport's fun because they have the new passport, right? Which is the thick, like PVC ID page, which you'll get, right? Because you have the old one with the bald eagle that's red, white, and blue.
Yes, I do. Yes, I'm very excited about upgrading.
Yeah. I was in Switzerland showing some friends my passport because they were very curious. And they said, it looks so American with the bald eagle, my old passport. Yeah. And I said, of course, like that's the point of a passport. You should look and they say, this seems very French.
The scariest part is I got this, I was like comparing my new passport photo to my old passport photo. And I don't want to show it to anybody, but I'm a lot skinnier. I'm in my teens still. I got it in 2015. So I was I was 19. I sent it to someone like, your face shape has changed. I said, it's called fat.
They're very polite when they just say your face shape is.
Yeah, no, that's what's very terrible.
My face in passports has become less smiley. So it used to, in the Midwest, where one of the passport printing offices is in Detroit, I think they're a little more loose on allowing you to smile versus some of the other ones. So I'm happier as a child, and then I gradually get more and more stern as I've had to renew my passport.
There's a life lesson there. But there's a reason you can't smile, though, right? That's got to be a sign.
They want a natural looking expression. You can do a natural smile, which is like a slight grin, but you can't really show your teeth. And I think the point is because if you smile, you look like a different person.
Because I guess it's weird. The people who are smiling all the time. This is where I'm very New England. People who are smiling all the time kind of give you you're just like a little sus. Like, what? I really should be joyful.
You're hiding something. Well, if you look like, a crazy like everyone on the passport photo doesn't look, looks like they shouldn't be leaving the country anyway. They look like, they're wanted for something. No, it does look like
I got arrested. And it looks nothing like an actual mugshot.
There's no lines behind telling you how tall you are, and you're not holding a little sign with your name. Well, here's a fun fact for you about passport photos is the passport photos, obviously a newer concept, post-photography. And originally they would just write general descriptions about you and say like, Father Lomnitzer, blonde, glasses, dressed like a priest usually. But when they came out with the photos, they didn't really have rules saying you can't smile. It has to be this with the white background and all that. The BBC did an article several years ago on it, and they showed some early passports in the United Kingdom. And one of them is of an Anglican bishop in full cope and mitre and crozier in his passport. So, which he did have to wear the hat for religious reasons. But that was the good old days when you could get a little more latitude. Passports are unique things. And there's, the different types of passports you can get in the United States?
I didn't know there were different types of passports.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Father.
For the record, I didn't. But go ahead.
I know, but I teed it up where I could kind of talk about what I wanted to, which is an art in and of itself. So there's the regular passport, which is what most people get. Then there's what's called an official passport. So it says official passport, and it's got a maroon, brownish red leather cover, and that's for government employees going on official business. So, and certain people in the military and different things. So it's saying you're traveling on behalf of the government of the United States. And then there's the diplomatic passport, which Supreme Court justices, accredited diplomats, former presidents, current presidents, and a bunch of other government people get. And it's black cover and says diplomatic passport. And that confirms you're a diplomat. And fun fact, the president's passport on the endorsements page, it says the bearer is the president of the United States.
When the president flies to foreign countries, does he have to go through customs?
I think it's done. Actually, I do know that's the answer. I'm so glad again you asked. Is that he does not go through customs formally himself. He doesn't wait in line, but there is a process where certain aides will display all the passports of the key officials to the local authorities, and they'll process it. So that's it. But it's interesting because I always wondered, all right, so there's this behind the scenes. There's a good YouTube video from the Obama administration where they show Obama's passport and they interview the guy who travels around with it for the president. But the King of England, or King of the United Kingdom, does not get a passport because it's issued in his name. So he can't issue himself a passport. So I wonder when he travels, does he have to, what do they show as a proxy? Is it like his crown? Like this is the king? Anyway, I didn't finish. So there's diplomatic passport.
I brought the crown jewels.
Here's my scepter. Let me in. But then there's also the purple passport, which I almost had to get, which is an emergency passport, which is if you lose yours. And when I was in South Africa, I was distracted by a mutual friend of ours who was flying back with me. And I have a normal process when I go through security of how I take things out of my pockets and whatnot. And he was talking to me. So I blame him completely and I take no responsibility. But I left my passport in the security tray and we're about to go through customs to leave South Africa. And I don't have my passport. And so I had to go out to the gate or they had to get to the check-in area, and luckily they had it because it had my name. So I didn't have to get the purple passport from the State Department. But these are all, interesting tidbits of history, which is a logical segue to other things from history, the Mass and Sabbath and Sundays, right?
How's that for segue? I think we're 10 out of 10 best what's the best transitions in the biz.
But yeah, we're here to talk about the keeping the Sabbath holy. Is that what we call it now in the church, or do we still use that term?
Keep holy the Sabbath. I believe that translation hasn't changed.
I didn't know if it had because we don't say, "Oh, I'm going to," like we say the Lord's Day. Do we?
The Lord's Day is very very apt. It's not incorrect. Probably more closer to the Latin, right? Domine being Lord, and Dominice, something like that in Latin for Sunday. Dominica in Italian. My Latin is it's gone for the moment.
It's Domingo in Espanol, right? So
Domingo, yeah. So the Lord's Day is the Sabbath because this is the day the Lord had made. Let us rejoice and be glad. And it's got very significant to creation and to Jesus' resurrection.
Well, don't spoil the ending of it. But yeah, so explain the origin, right? So why do we have a one day off a week?
On the first day, God separated, or he said, let there be light. This is where I test kids and stuff. And then when I have to remember, I'm like, I had notes. But on the first day, God created the heavens and the earth. Or I think he separated light from darkness. That's what it was. Yeah, Luke's. People are gonna be so disappointed that their priest on the show is not an expert on many things. I swear I know this when I have time to when I'm pressed. Yeah, well, now it makes it seem like I'm not prepared. God said, let there be light. And so the first day of creation, it's the first day of the order. And then we talk about how Sunday is the first day, as in the beginning of creation, but it's also the eighth day, which is the beginning of the.
We started talking a little bit more about you rested on the Saturday, right? And so to watch football, college football.
Well, that's a part of it.
But but we don't jump to the New Testament just yet, right? So the seventh day, right? We have to fill an hour here. You and I can talk about a lot, but you're already getting to the finish line. So
evening came and morning followed, right, the first day.
No, you'd have to go through all 7 days. We're talking about just the seventh day. So 6th day, whole universe created. Although we should caveat, because this is a big thing that bothers me. So everyone assumes that the church teaches that the earth was created in actual 6, 24-hour periods. But the church has allowed for openness to contemplate broader.
No, the church does not have an official statement on how long it became how long the earth took to make.
So like the 4.5 billion years of the Big Bang and everything, someone can think about, because the Big Bang was formulated by a Belgian priest. But anyway, I just want to put that out there because it's one of my pet peeves when I meet some people who don't understand that point.
But God could create the world in 6 days.
Could God make a rock so big he couldn't lift it, Father?
No, he couldn't.
Could God make a square circle? No. All right. Well, but he could make the earth in 6 days. But he could also make it over 4.5 billion
if he so
years.
chooses.
All right. So God created, but so he rested, and the Jewish people on the seventh day. And the Jewish people observed that. We hear that in the Bible that, on this Saturday they would refrain from work. And also it was every 7 years they had a Jubilee, right? I don't know if they use Jubilee in the Old Testament, right?
The year of the Lord. Yeah, I think the guy declared a year of the Lord. I think that's kind of what the Old Testament lingo is.
Well, because this is another economic thing, which is that Jubilees, when they were first contrived, they were a certain cadence where it'd only be like once a lifetime you'd have a Jubilee, right? So if that was like every 50 years or something.
Every 50 years, then it became every 25. And then there are extraordinary years of Jubilee, which is what the year of mercy was. It was an extraordinary year.
I was in Rome for it. I remember walking through a lot more holy doors. Only 4 holy doors this year. But another fun fact relating to business is, some of the medieval popes, when the coffers were a little light, to encourage more visiting to Rome, would call jubilees and say, win-win.
Tourism is great for business.
Yes. And considering that the Vatican City State does not charge a tax, at least at this moment, revenue from tourism is a big part of it. But that's not why Leo or Francis called this Jubilee. This was a scheduled one. This was on target. And but the largest revenue source for the Holy See is, I think, the Vatican museums, right?
They operated in the they published their books. I think they were in the black last year.
We'll talk about Vatican finances another day. That's a whole other kettle of fish, as they say. So they would rest every 7 years, right? They'd get a little bit but they wouldn't rest the whole year. They just have some certain privileges and things in recognition of the 7 years of creation. And so they did this all the time. And then Jesus was killed on a Friday, right? And they put him away before the Sabbath. Because I didn't realize this until much later, that I always thought like the Sunday was the Jewish Sabbath and everything. But no, because this is another thing, another pet peeve. Speaking of venting, calendars.
Your show, have fun. I'm just here to interject every now and then.
I have a lot of pent up things on the calendar myself, but American calendars.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has switched to spiritual direction with policy.
That means that it's privileged, so this cannot be admissible in court. Because American calendars, we have Sunday's the first day of the week, Saturday's the last day of the week, which is how God created the earth and the world and everything. But European calendars, they begin the week on Monday and ended on Sunday. But anyway, so ours is justified biblically. But Sunday became the Sabbath, and explain how that happened, Father. Now it's your show.
Well, I'm confused. For our listeners, if you could clarify what exactly was your pet peeve that Europe starts the week on a different day?
They started on Monday. We started on Sunday.
Oh, okay. So you don't like that?
No, but I used to think we were wrong. Because I'm like, the last day he rested, which is Sunday. And then I'm like, no, he rested on Saturday, which was the Sabbath, sábado in Espanol. And so therefore the week begins on Sunday, because that's when God started working on Sunday.
Well, yes. So the seventh day is Saturday. And then it's he rested. He was also in the tomb. But he wasn't doing nothing while he was in the tomb. He was in hell, going to hell. Coming back. He was coming back. And so, it becomes the first day and the eighth day. So it's the first day of creation, but then it's the eighth day. So new creation. So it's the day after Sabbath. In fact, Justin Martyr says, when he was talking about the liturgy in his apology, kind of explaining church teaching, he says, we all gather on the day of the sun, Sunday, for it is the first day after the Jewish Sabbath, but also the first day when God, separating matter from darkness, made the world. We have our answer, light and darkness, on the first day. And on this same day, Jesus Christ, our Savior, rose from the dead. So Sunday becomes the day of the resurrection, the Lord's Day, and that's when the celebrations from the early cults of Judaism and Christianity, where Christianity arose from. Christianity, remember, started as a Jewish sect. They moved their worship from Saturday to Sunday, which was one of the big between early Christians and the Jewish people at the time. So first day, eighth day, very important to remember, I guess. I only think it's important because it was a question on a test in seminary, but also life has taught me as a priest that things that were important in seminary are not really important to anybody else. But that's Sundays. It's the first day of creation, but also the first day of new creation, the recreation of God's glorified human state. But the Sabbath comes up a lot in Jesus's time. The Pharisees don't like what Jesus is doing on the Sabbath, and so that gives you a little insight into how the Jewish people observe the Sabbath, and they literally mean like you're not allowed to do any work, right? Like they got in trouble because Jesus healed somebody on the Sabbath. And then his apostles were picking grain off the wheat off the heads of in the field and eating it because they were hungry. And they're like, your apostles are eating and working, like they're working on the Sabbath. And it's just like, it's such a simple task, but they really were the Pharisees and the Sadducees were also very legalistic in certain things, as Jesus says, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. As it's like a reminder of the order of creation and of who we are. But that I always thought that was really funny. It's like, whoa, chill. I said it to the Pharisees a lot. Calm down.
Chill. Calm yourself. If only you could have been in the Gospels. And Father Lomster said to the Pharisees, chill.
Yo, calm down.
Yo. So the early Christians were worshiping on Sunday, which was the Lord's Day, because God conquered Sunday again. And dig into Christ, we were talking about
Christ the Emperor.
Christ the Emperor, a mosaic I heard about in a podcast where Christ is depicted as Roman Emperor, and it goes back to like the 400s or something. So it's legit. He doesn't have a beard, but he's standing on like a serpent. He's got a staff. Anyway, another episode. So Sunday. So what would early Christians what would Christians do on Sunday? I mean, we know what we do now, right? But before, what was kind of the early way that Sunday was observed?
Well, they would have mass.
Oh.
And there's a bit of a debate between like where early Christians celebrated, like some in the persecution, like there would be mass in the catacombs, masses for the dead, and like these house churches, like people, like it's very popular, like these agape meals, and like these clandestine masses, and these house churches were probably actually just dedicated for worship. Like they probably were not like somebody's actual house. So like when people think of like, well, the early Christians, were like invited over to this person's apartment and they had, bread and wine and they all shared it and passed it around. That's actually probably not even close to what happened. And the more and more it was very popular when archaeology and liturgical archaeology was happening in the liturgical movement. But as more and more research happens, we learn more and more, right? It gets more sophisticated, more things are made up. As they're building the Roman subway, they find more things. So these house masses are probably actually just house masses. And St. Justin Martyr is like our primary source to kind of what was happening. And he talks about how there would be readings from scripture, and then they would take up the collection. So that is
that's very ancient.
About that. It's an ancient practice. And then they would have the consecration, and there are varying forms of the Eucharistic prayer, but we don't have to get into that. But like the words of consecration were etched in or codified by St. Paul, the first person to write, what has been handed on to us, I hand on to you, that on the night before he was betrayed, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and said, take this, all of you, and eat of it, for this is my body, which will be given up for you. And the same thing with the chalice. So St. Paul is the earliest written form that we have of that. And so that's probably what they did. Like St. John definitely, like they said, so that was like the earliest form of the Mass, which really is not so foreign to what we're doing now. And of course, over the centuries, it became more unified because you get different cultural adaptations, and then it's the great unification of the Council of Trent in 1570. But the main structure of the Mass, wherever you went, was the same. That there would be readings from Scripture, like the liturgy of the Word, and then a liturgy of the Eucharist. So that basic structure of the Mass is kind of what took place then. The deacons of the church would go and bring communion to the sick, to the homebound, and then they would watch the Coliseum on live TV.
To continue our NFL, tradition goes back to the early Christians. Well, I always think with Justin Martyr, what are the odds that the guy with the last name Martyr got martyred?
I think he got that after.
It's like, what are the odds that, Lou Gehrig would get Lou Gehrig's disease?
Yeah, that's a great joke.
I think people are laughing hysterically now listening to this, hopefully. But anyway, so it was Justin the Martyr, but he lost the.
John the Baptist.
John Baptist.
I saw a joke the other day. It's like when you realize John the Baptist and Winnie the Pooh have the same middle name. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So yes, well, like Charlemagne was never called Charlemagne in his life. He was Charlemagne, right? Charles the Great. So, but anyway, enough of the middle name. But so the early Christians would do this, and they would refrain from work on Sundays. Is that right?
I believe so.
They were supposed to.
That's what the law says.
Yeah. So what does the law say? So anyway, so we've had this. So the Mass has, continued its evolution to today. And we've seen, like there was the whole root screen thing, which you're talking about before, Matt, before we started recording, which is Mass was originally in like a room inside the church, and you didn't really know what was going on. This is pre-Trent, right?
Well, so for the modern listener, if you look at a church and you see like you have the sanctuary and then the nave, which is the nave is the body of the church. So the nave is where you're sitting, and the sanctuary is where the priest is and all the action happens. So a rood screen is just imagine like a curtain or a fancy wood carving from floor to ceiling or from floor to higher than you at the entrance of the sanctuary. So that would be what the rood screen is. So it's a separation. So Mass would be taking place. Have you ever seen like an Orthodox church with like an icona? I always want to say iconoclast, but that's a totally different thing.
That's the people who don't like the icons.
It's iconostas.
Iconostasis.
I, with all due respect to my Orthodox brothers and sisters, I can't for the life of me remember what it's called. And the comments in this are going to be roasting me. But anyways, that's kind of what it was like, with maybe a little less icons or such. And so Mass would be going on in the sanctuary, and people would be there, and they would, this is without technology. So a lot of the Mass would be chanted, a lot of the Mass would be said quietly, so you would only get kind of the gist of it. But there would still be, but also like not to look at this as like a lack, right? Like, oh, well, how could people participate? This is very much kind of in line with early Jewish worship of the priest going into the Holy of Holies and then coming out and the people participating in the sacrifice through their offerings and in different ways. So it wasn't totally foreign, and it was kind of just like an organic development, as we like to say, of that happening. But so at Mass, it was probably a lot longer than an hour. I'd just like to say, I have a gripe. Maybe I should be nicer about it. I don't understand like Mass being over an hour, like being too long. This is coming from somebody whose first Mass was like close to 3 hours.
That's which was a little too long. I had to go to a train, and so
you should have planned better.
Anyway,
no,
I took the last train. Anyway, but so Mass was longer, and there's a root screen, and people were just kind of, I guess, wandering around. Were they sitting, or were they? Because the pews came later.
Pews are a Protestant invention. So if you like sitting and kneeling on a pew, thank Martin Luther. No, I don't know if we can't attribute that to him, but so it's if you go to Rome, if you've ever been to Rome, this is the best example, and you walk into St. Mary Major or St. Peter's or St. John Lateran, you'll notice like they're just like plastic chairs that they put in and remove out. And so if you were to walk into these ancient basilicas, they would be cavernous. There would be nothing there. So people would either stand or kneel the entire time on the floor. So I guess I have some friends who find that, kneeling too long so we have a kneeling too long during the Eucharistic prayer. And I was just like, you guys don't know how good you have it.
You can sit down.
Yeah.
So if somebody's like hanging out in the aisle, just kind of standing and loitering, they're actually doing the traditional thing.
Because the posture of the people wasn't rubricized until much, much later in church history, like 19th, 20th century.
Well, speaking of, so there's this painting by Giovanni Paolo Panini. Presumably his family invented the panini in 1750, which you can all look up. It's at the iconic Detroit Institute of Arts, but it shows St. Peter's Basilica, and it's called Interior St. Peter's, Rome. So you can Google it. I don't know if there's a way to share my screen on this app yet. So, but in it, it's kind of fun because if you look at the bottom, so for those of you who can see this and my bookmarks, so this is from 1750. So even after Trent, but yeah, you're right. So St. Peter's is empty, and there's some people kneeling, there's some people walking, there's people talking. So yes, the church was a little more, I don't think a papal mass is going on though at the high altar. Yeah, people were milling about during mass, and then we get the pews and anything. And so the church has taught that we are supposed to go to, what does it say? What does the catechism say? To the catechism.
No, there's a few paragraphs. The Sunday celebration of the Lord's Day and his Eucharist is the heart of the church's life. Sunday is the day on which the Paschal mystery is celebrated in light of the apostolic tradition and is to be observed as the foremost holy day of obligation in the universal church, and also a list of holy days. This practice of the Christian assembly dates from the beginnings of the apostolic age. The letter to the Hebrews reminds the faithful not to neglect to meet together, as is the habit of some, but to encourage one another. Tradition preserves the memory of an ever timely exhortation. Come to church early. Come to church early.
It does say come to church early.
Approach the Lord and confess your sins. Repent in prayer. Be present in the sacred and divine liturgy. Conclude its prayer and do not leave before the dismissal. Guys, that's in the catechism.
Does it really say all that?
We have. This is quoting. A sermon on a Sunday.
Somebody.
No person. We have often said, this day is given to you for prayer and rest. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Wow. That's amazing.
Does it say, wow, that's amazing at the end?
Oh, no, that was me. That was my commentary.
Okay. To clarify before somebody quotes this. So it says you have to show up early. So that's kind of unique. I guess I can't be on time doesn't count. So if you show up at 11 a.m. for an 11 a.m. mass, you got to be
on time. And on time. It's really funny. This is how I was raised for anyone who knows me, but on time is late. I'm just late.
Anyway, we won't divulge too much into that, but yeah, so that's it. But doesn't it? Yeah. But all right. So we're supposed to go to mass, but does it talk anything about work? Is the catechism, or is it somewhere else?
Yes, a day of grace and rest from work. Just as God rested on the seventh day from all his work, which he had done, human life has a rhythm of work and rest. The institution of the Lord's Day helps everyone enjoy adequate rest and leisure to cultivate their familial, cultural, social, and religious lives. This is 2184. And then 2185 says, on Sundays and other holy days of obligation, the faithful are to refrain from engaging in work or activities that hinder the worship owed to God, the joy proper to the Lord's Day, the performance of the works of mercy, and the appropriate relaxation of mind and body. Family needs are important social service can legitimately excuse from the obligation of Sunday rest. The faithful should see to it that legitimate excuses do not lead to habits prejudicial to religion, family life, and health.
Wow.
There's a few more, but that's a good place to talk about. You have to go to mass early. You can't leave late. You can't leave early.
Yeah.
You have to participate. And we can talk more about like mass and participation, but then that has to continue. The dismissal of mass is very like teaching. Like it's a command.
Go and
eat. In Latin, it's ite missa est, which is very difficult to translate. They've given
you are sent
five different options, but it literally means, as best as you can literally translate, go be sent. Ite missa est, that's where we get the term mass from, missa, mass. So it's like mass is ascending. So we come to mass to give, to offer worship, and then we're sent out to continue that mission, to continue the sacrifice of Christ and the worship of God in our daily lives. And so resting is I don't think this would be too bold to say that resting on Sunday could be seen as an extension of the Mass. This is often why Italians have like a Sunday dinner, right? It's the extension of the familial meal. So Mass, of course, is a sacrificial meal. And so families always gather together around a table to eat in a community. And that's very much an old custom that a lot of Italians do.
Sunday night dinner. Yeah. So.
Oh, it's very much an extension of the Mass. I am not Italian, but I respect and admire mostly everything.
Well, that's very admirable. But it talks, and also, recognizing that you're supposed to abstain from work, right? Which can be a challenge in a 24/7 culture, but we're supposed to unplug and not be focused too much on temporal things, and give it over to God and to rest. But it does say because I remember growing up, there were Sundays, you always hear this, Sundays felt different. But actually in the great state of Michigan, there was a law, you could not sell alcohol before noon on Sundays. So as a child, when I would buy alcohol, I'd I can't do it before noon on Sundays. I'm just kidding.
Connecticut had Connecticut just changed recently in Connecticut, but Connecticut, you couldn't buy Sunday at all.
At all.
You couldn't buy alcohol at all.
At all. So.
At all. I could buy some today. That's that's why I'm sorry.
That's not prohibition.
I'm kidding.
But you're supposed to. But at the same time, the church does make carve-outs for firefighters and police officers and important things to keep society afloat, right? What does it say? Social services.
Social services. And that's from rest, right? Family needs are important social services, right? So in earlier in the catechism I can't remember the exact paragraph, but exempt from the obligation, here we go, 2181. It's unless excused for a serious reason. For example, illness and the care of infants, which is the two examples that they give, or dispensed by their own pastor. So when my nephew was born, it takes a lot of work to take care of a newborn. And so there was a while before either my brother or my sister-in-law could get to Mass, and I told them, you guys are fine. It's
a legitimate carve-out. And cite the catechism.
And illness, right? If you're sick, just please don't come to Mass. The amount of people that are hacking up a lung in the first pew around everybody, right? The obligation is not meant to put us in harm or in danger, right? And so in a winter snowstorm, my priest and I talk about this all the time. It could be the nastiest snowstorm ever. This is a New England problem, probably Michigan too. And we have to walk to the church, and we do it in our boots, and it's fine. And we're expecting the church to be empty. And there's always one elderly lady who you wonder how she drives on a normal day, but she's there. And you got to say Mass to her, and you want to tell her it's really noble. It's very beautiful. She's not missing Mass, but you also want to tell her you didn't have to come. It was actually probably a bad idea for you to come. I'm worried about you getting home. So that's another thing to consider.
And there's exceptions for sailors, right? So that goes back very ancient.
Specifically sailors.
Specifically maritime professions. Shout out Merchant Marine Academy, our rivals in athletics at Catholic U.
The
Marines. This is the Merchant Marines. Peter Falk, he was a member. But yeah, because you're supposed to. There's obviously it's a thing created by man. It's created for man, but it understands that we live in a world that has temporal needs and things that have to persist. So it does create exceptions. But that being said, you don't want the exception to be the norm, right? And so
no, you don't want it to become the rules.
Yeah, the average person, right, should make every effort to go to Mass if it's safe, reasonable, they're healthy, they're not caring for an infant, they're not, indigent or homebound. And then at the same time, you should make a reasonable effort. And this is something that I've worked on a lot because I used to run a lot of errands on the weekends, still run errands on the weekends. But if it's errands that are I have to get someone else to work, right? Going to the grocery store or something, right? I won't do that on Sundays because I want to be able to make it. It doesn't really fix it because there's people still working on Sundays, and we wish everyone to, have gainful employment. But kind of the Pareto that like, I'm not going to compel someone to work on Sunday other than like, yeah, if I cut my leg off, I'll maybe go to the hospital, or just put some dirt on it. Right. But like, should there be a desire, like even restaurants, like, do you go to a restaurant on Sunday? Is it more noble or is it more desirable to not compel people to work? Right. Cause it's your leisure, but for them, they're working. And so like, how would you approach that, Father? Shouldn't we try to avoid activities where we compel us to work? I think
to the best of our abilities, we should avoid things that like do like an undue burden. So then the question is like yard work, and we don't want to be too legalistic about it, right? A lot of it is about the person, right? So like mowing your grass, like is that work? It's a question of it needs to be joyful, like it needs to actually like be like happy. You don't want to do things on Sunday that make you miserable. It could be like a work of mercy. Yeah, like going to a soup kitchen on Sunday. It's not like you're violating the Sabbath. It's like you're fulfilling certain things, right? Like you're working, but you're providing a work of mercy, right? And so there's that, and then it talks about something that it can't hinder the appropriate relaxation of mind and body. A good book recommendation. It's kind of short. It's very philosophical. It's by Joseph Pieper. It's called Leisure, the Basis of Culture. And he talks about how leisure is a rest or a recreation, and recreation, it recreates, right? So rest, there's like, being the sloth on the couch who watches Netflix all day. I wouldn't say that is the spirit of the Sabbath, but because doing nothing is exhausting. And so, right, like you just get tired watching Netflix and all this stuff. And so the question is, how does rest provide an actual renewal, right? Like it should restore mind and body. And so that could be like what a leisurely activity is. It's like, and leisure, this might be a hot take. Leisure cannot often be done alone. I think there are times where there are leisurely activities that you can do by yourself, but the majority of it should be done together. Sunday should be a family day. Sports on Sunday, I have a huge problem with, especially for kids, mostly when it interferes with the Sunday obligation of Mass, because a Sunday game in the afternoon could also be a moment of like leisure and family time. But Sunday sports, like for kids, like I've got a lot of opinions on that.
Like Chariots of Fire, right? So,
yeah. Okay.
Well, because he wouldn't run on Sundays, right? That was his whole thing.
Well, the best runners in the world, in the United States, are the Mormon runners in Utah, and they will not practice on Sunday. They won't run on Sundays. And everyone's asking what's different about all the others. All the other runners are training 7 days a week. That 1 day of rest apparently is giving them a big boost. So that's the speculation on that. Clayton Young and the other guy, I can't remember his name. This is embarrassing. This is a bad night for me. But so, yeah, I think it's as much personal as like, I think grocery shopping on Sunday, like if you could avoid it, like if you could do it Saturday, do it Saturday. Some things like you kind of just like have to do, and that's fine. But I think things that are avoidable and can be moved is the long and short of what I've been trying to say.
I think it's good is that the church recognizes that it's hard to find there's certain absolute principles like go to Mass, right? If you can. And it's, but it also understands that, what leisure and family time and everything takes multiple facets. It's not like, on every Sunday you shall now play golf, right? Which I think if you were writing the catechism, you might say, right, people have to do but that's your idea of leisure. But other people are like, well, mine is reading a book, or mine is going to a soup kitchen, or, bringing clothes to people without clothes. Right. There's different things that can.
No, and it's important to note because there are a lot of people who feel bad that they miss Sunday Mass, which it's a good thing in a sense that it's an indication of like, you're you want to go and you're supposed to be there, but you can't. Like a lot of parishioners who are nurses and they work 12-hour shifts, or they're working back-to-backs on weekends, right? And they're in the ICU or whatever, and they physically can't go to mass. And so we also the alternatives, like if there's a Catholic mass at the hospital on a Sunday, talk to your supervisor, see if you can sneak away. But if not, like, you're dispensed, but you should also do. So then this is a question too of like, you should do something else as a way of worship. Like there should be a moment of prayer. There should be a moment of consecrated sacred time. And that is also, I think somebody's really struggling with it. They should talk to if it's a regular habit, they should talk to their priest and get the dispensation or make sure that they can do it and work out a plan. Like that is like a valid excuse to miss Sunday mass. Traveling, I get this a lot. This is going to sound really cold, but like plan better. My favorite recommendation, wherever you are in the world, masstimes.org. That's masstimes.org. You put in your location, put in the zip code, and it will tell you every mass time and when there are confessions now too, or if there's adoration or anything in the area. So traveling on Sundays, I'm okay with if you can go to mass. Here's one of my pet peeves. The Saturday night mass is not called a vigil.
It's the anticipatory mass.
It's an anticipatory mass. And it's actually, it didn't exist until the 20th century. And it's what's kind of called a mass of convenience, right? So the church living in the world recognizes that, well, one, we have to have multiple masses so we can fit everyone in the church, right? That's a great problem to have. But also Sundays, there are inevitable things that you can't miss. And so there's a Saturday evening mass that anticipates the Sunday obligation. So everyone calls it the vigil mass. The vigil mass means something completely different liturgically. So it's an anticipated Sunday mass, and it's a mass of convenience. It's really not supposed to be the norm. I know many people who go to daily mass and their Saturday is a twofer, and the only day of mass, the only day of the week that they don't go to mass is Sunday. And it's like, it's not really the spirit of everything that's happening. And so, to the best of your ability, go to Sunday mass. Saturday masses exist for the purposes of when you can't go on Sunday.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because this is understanding that the church is, right, a divine institution that has the authority to be able to make these pronouncements, right? Because some people could say, well, couldn't they just make Tuesday Sunday, right? It's like, well, no, like they have obviously an informed tradition. And like in Las Vegas, they have, I think, one of the earliest anticipatory masses times, because they recognize that so many of the people, for their economic need and their viability, have to work weird hours because the casinos are 24/7, right? And so they have an indult from the Vatican. I don't know when it is, but there's like a certain time that an anticipatory mass is not supposed to be before, right? It's like
4:00.
Not before 4:00, but they were given something earlier. And then Dubai, I know this from a friend of the show, Grady Connolly. They only have, I think, one parish in the whole city of Dubai, which is a big international center. And it's similar. It's kind of like the Las Vegas of the Middle East. Like there's a lot, it's in the desert, but it's obviously got a lot of entertainment and lively things going on. But they have, I think, like it's like 8 a.m. on Saturday. They have something from the Vatican, which authorizes anticipatory, because they can't fit everyone in the church, right? So
there's an old advertisement in a church. I used to be able to find it on Google. I haven't seen it in a while, but it was when the anticipatory masses were coming. It was come to Sunday mass on Friday, and so the Vatican really did have to kind of correct it and say it should start at 4. And there are laws about it, but there should also, like, we have a Sunday evening mass at 5 p.m. Here, which is very popular. And one of my parishes where I was as a seminarian was a strong Latino community. It was the only all Spanish parish in the diocese. And so daily mass was at 7 p.m. because that was the time everyone could go, and the church was packed. And then there was like 12 Sunday masses, and you kind of just, as a priest, you kind of just have to do it. But right, like, I mean, we live in an area in the United States where we are so grateful. I know priests in Latin America, in Peru especially, that they have missions, right? And so they have their parish church, but then they also have to travel to a bunch of other parishes and say, more masses than they should be saying every Sunday. So here, we have 6 Sunday masses, and I only have to say 2. So like, and I cover where I need to, but like, there are so many masses in such a small area, at least in New England. I'm sure there are places in like South Dakota where it's difficult, but and I know there are situations that I'm not like thinking of, so I don't want to sound too harsh, but really there are like ample opportunities to go to mass. And part of it is just making it the habit, making it the routine, making it more than an obligation, right? That is, Sunday mass is the day of worship of our Lord, and where we give thanks to him saving us and redeeming us. And there's a personal spirituality to it that we haven't really touched upon, because it's so much more than just like laws and commands. But that's obviously a part of it. I talk about how the commandments are a failsafe. Like, we have a natural desire to worship God. And when we forget that, the commandment's there to like get us into church. But ideally, right, we're just, Sunday should be part of like the normal rhythm, right? Where we work, but then we worship, and we can separate in a sense from the world and be one and kind of have a transcendental experience. It was a line in the Office of Readings today, which said that the Saint Basil and Saint Gregory of Nazianzen, they wanted to withdraw from the world before they departed from it. And there's a great beauty to that, and that's what we do on Sundays, is we withdraw from the world to remind us that like, work is good. You need money. You need food, you need shelter. Work is essential, and there's a special relationship that we have to work, but work is not an end in of itself. It's a means to our sanctification and to our nourishment. And so we make an idol out of work. And so like responding emails on Sunday, when I was a student, I really tried not to do homework on Sunday, and that wasn't just out of laziness, but it means that you have to prepare. Like, if I have an assignment due Monday, I have to do it Friday or Saturday. I can't just put it off to the last minute. And so the same thing, like, I mean, I don't have a lot of time to sit in front of my computer and check emails on Sunday. I know a lot of people do it on their phone, but I can't. I'll just be on it all the time. But to set that boundary of like, turn off the computer, turn off the phone, turn off an app or whatever, and just don't look at it. You can correct me here because this is your area of expertise. I feel like most things that happen over a weekend can wait. And if it can't wait, if it really is an emergency, then like you have a valid reason to be a part of it. But like,
yes,
tune out.
No, I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Cause like sometimes, there's obviously work you do during the week, and then sometimes things drag in. You have to, get something done over the weekend. And so I slide out on Saturday. And if there was an emergency, my boss called and said like, everything's on fire, which has never happened, but like that would be obviously an emergency. And so therefore we could talk about it and do it on Sunday. Right. And so there's that exception. And so we've seen the evolution of smartphones, but like it used to be all notifications were at the same weight, at the same alertness. Right. And now you can say, oh, this is quiet time. This one, the notification we delivered silently and all that. And so I make an effort. I have a setting where it automatically will turn off notifications from work on on Sundays. And so that way I'm not getting, no one's Teams chatting me, but I guess if there was like an email that came in or something, right? Now, obviously I don't block text messages on Sunday because someone might want to tell me some funny joke or gif, but similarly my boss like could call me and say, hey, there's an emergency, or a coworker could say, hey, something's run amok. But and try not to open the apps right on those, or the work apps. So you can kind of just more deliberately unplug, and it's good for your mental health to have that break and to be refreshed and to come back on Monday. And, but I think it's kind of an interesting point is, right, we talk a lot about Sundays and the precepts of the church, which you have to do to be a practicing Catholic, right? Is that the way to think of what a precept of the church is?
They're essential. The bare minimum.
They're essential. So like this is the bare minimum. If you're doing this, you are a practicing Catholic. If you are not doing this, you are not a practicing Catholic. Is that a good way to think about it?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So the first precept, there's 5 of them, and there's kind of an asterisk. They put on a 6th one here, but they don't call it a 6th precept. So the first is you shall attend Mass on Sundays and holy days of obligation. So 52 Sundays, handful of holy days of obligation.
I think there's only
that's pretty easy.
I think there's only like 7 holy days.
So it's 59 times a year you have to go to Mass.
All right. Like Christmas and Easter, the Epiphany here got moved to Sunday. Ascension of the Lord, depending on where you are, is on a Sunday. In my neck of the woods, it's Thursday. Corpus Christi got moved to Sunday, so you got that. Feast of Mary, Mother of God, is January 1st. Immaculate Conception, December 8th. Her Assumption, which I don't think is a holy day in the States, but is a holy day. And then All Saints. That's the only other one. There are a lot more holy days in the Catechism that the United States has gotten exempt from. So we really have it easy.
Yes, because even before, like, there were times when you had a lot more, because you had like our holidays. Like, that's why we have holy day, right? That we take off certain days for President's Day, Martin Luther King Day, right, Memorial Day, to acknowledge our civic pride. And the church, many of our holidays have dual respects, right? So Christmas is a federal holiday and it's a church holiday, right? And so that's good. Thanksgiving is a secular holiday, which we have, there's some religious elements to it as well, as we've talked about, I think.
But it is not a church holiday.
It's not a church holiday, because every Mass is a Mass of Thanksgiving.
Correct.
And so at the same time, like, no one's ever like, oh, I've got whatever the holiday is in the secular world. I have President's Day off. I'm unplugging then from work, right? And so His Greatest George Washington is God is greater. And so, like, we should take that same fervent too. And I've actually tried to do this with some degree, because I'm going to jump to the 5th precept, and we'll talk about the others quickly before everyone forgets. Well, actually, I'll do the other ones real quick and then talk about the 5th precept or 4th precept. So 2nd, confess your sins at least once a year. So go to confession once a year. Done. 3rd precept, you shall humbly receive your Creator in Holy Communion at least during the Easter season. So receive communion once during Easter, which is not Easter Sunday per se, but the 50 days of Easter, right?
Can I add some commentary?
Yes.
No, I think it's very important, because I get this a lot of the times where people, so we're not supposed to receive communion when we're in a state of mortal sin. A mortal sin is something that we know is bad. And it's grave. It's grave. The matter of it is grave. It's serious. And then we freely choose to do it, right? So those are the 3 things for a sin to be mortal. If you committed a mortal sin, like, because you have to, that's one of the things. When we've committed a mortal sin, like not going to Mass on Sunday, missing a holy day of obligation, saying the Lord's name in vain, believe it or not, and then a whole other slew of things, we should not receive communion until we can go to confession. So we have venial sins. Actually, the reception of the Eucharist forgives those sins, right? The sacraments do what they say they can. And the sacrament is poured out for the forgiveness of sins, right? So when we receive the body and blood of Christ with the intention of forgiveness and receiving forgiveness, then our sins are forgiven as well, right? But a mortal sin...
Is that a loophole? I didn't know that.
In the Catechism, buddy.
So, like, if I kick someone and then I go receive communion, we're squares away.
Well, you probably still have to apologize to them, but you should still always confess venial sins. Always. Get it all out there. Always. It's always a good thing. Somebody, I have no venial sins and no mortal sins. Or I said, I just only have venial sins. I was like, okay, and they are. because
kicking might be a mortal sin, depending on. Anyway, I don't want to get into.
I mean, yeah, because that's Fifth Commandment level stuff there, which is like stomp them in, yeah. But anyways, so we're not supposed to receive communion in the state of mortal sin, and maybe there's a lot more I could say about that. But St. Paul says, whoever does so, right, eats and drinks to their own condemnation. Like it's a serious thing, because not only have you had one mortal sin, but now receiving communion in the state of mortal sin is another mortal sin. So now you have two mortal sins, and that's not good. Mortal sin, of course, being the complete separation from God. So you should go to confession. So this is why the precept is go to confession and then receive communion, because it's once a year with once a communion. So it's this idea that you're going to confession before you receive communion. We should go to confession more often, especially if we're receiving communion more often. If you do not receive communion during Mass, you still went to Mass.
If you arrived early and did not leave before the dismissal.
Yeah, and didn't leave early. Don't leave. Leaving early during Mass might bring into question. This is going to be a lot of people. Don't leave early during Mass, because it does bring into question whether or not you fulfilled the obligation. And not to be too legalistic about it, but that's a serious thing. And again, it's an hour. The early church was going way longer. But I hear that all the time as Father, I went to Mass, but I couldn't receive communion. And they confess that as if they did something wrong. And I can commend them. Like, that's actually not a sin. You actually did the right thing. And we want to continue that practice, right? Because the point of Mass is not to hear an amazing homily. And thank God, because that puts a lot more pressure on me. I do try my best to not stink. But if you usually ask people how Mass is and they judge it. Well, the homily was good, or the homily was long. The homily was okay, right? Like that's how people are judging the Mass. And that's not, I mean, yes, the homily should be good, and there should be time, and there should be preparation, but that's not the point of Mass, nor is it receiving Holy Communion. The point of Mass is, what do we give? What do we offer? What do we worship? And then when we're in a state of grace, because God will not be outdone in generosity, he gives us his body, blood, soul, and divinity as a gift, as a grace, right? And that's the idea of communion, right? We get to be one with our Creator, one with who we are worshiping, sacramentally and physically. So the precept of the church is to receive communion only once a year. Obviously, it's better to do it more than that. Pius X was really big on that, right? Daily communion even. But we still should be going to confession regularly, and it's okay to not receive communion if you're in a state of sin. And everybody stop judging people who aren't receiving communion. Like, I don't know how many people are doing it, but people feel like they're being judged for not receiving communion. It's like, oh, what mortal sin did they commit? They may have had they may have had a bagel in the car and like didn't realize that they missed the fast, right? They lost track of time. Like, people are there to worship God. That is enough. No judgment.
Yes. And the invitation of Christ says, this is really good. But it talks about don't be, because this is before, I think, frequent worthy reception of communion, which, yes, Pius X is really drove. But in the invitation of Christ, it talks about, don't there could be sort of a false humility or something before it became normative to receive communion, where people are like, I'm never worthy to receive communion or something. And it talks about in the catechism, it says, don't refrain from communion unless you're properly, if you're properly disposed. Like, that can be, it says, it's could be the devil, right? Saying, either tricking you into false humility. Because it used to be before Pius X, you would get communion, much rarer, right? Or you would go to receive much rarer. And so there could be a false humility that and so it talks about that, but it says at the same time, don't be, yes, to your point, don't judge people who don't receive. But also it says it's good that you don't receive if you're not disposed to receive, right? So whether it's the fast or the mortal sin aspect, or there's a whole host, you can't receive communion a certain number of times. Like, I remember when I would help out at different masses at Catholic Youth, sometimes I would go over the however many times you can receive communion. And so I wouldn't receive at the mass I was helping out with, or I was attending because there was somebody else there, whatever the reason was. And so there's that distinction. So yes, you shall humbly receive your prayer and Holy Communion, at least during the Easter season, right, is the third one. And then the fourth one, which is back on topic, we're all on topic, which is you shall keep holy you shall keep holy the holy
You
days
doing
of
okay there, buddy?
obligation.
You want to read?
They said holy twice. I kind of was like, I'm not reading that right. This is from the Vatican website. You shall keep holy the holy days of obligation. Complete the Sunday, blah, blah, blah. So, but that's one, like, I used to think, oh yeah, and like holy days of obligation, we go to mass, right? I thought that was all that made the holy days of obligation special. But recognizing that actually, no, we're supposed to treat it like Sunday and as much as it's a holiday. And so I'm lucky work where I have, time off and I can, like, I haven't not perfect about it, but when there is a holy day, to actually take the day off and say, hey, I'm going to be out, right, on December 8th, right? Or whatever it is. Luckily, like Christmas is a federal holiday. So I don't have to say like, I'm taking Christmas off, such a hero. But like, and obviously, yes, we talked about the extenuating circumstances for economic need and emergencies and all these things. But if you can make that effort, I think it's sacrificial because, right, the average, I work with a lot of Europeans and have in the past, they get a lot of big holidays and they get a lot of holidays, but then they also get a lot of vacation days. In the US, we average a lot less. But I think it is a sacrificial gift if you have only 2 weeks of vacation a year and you use one of your vacation days to, not to go to Florida, as much fun as that is, but to actually observe the holy day and not work, right? And to use that in that way as kind of an offering. And it's a win-win. Like you get a day off, right? But also it's an offering to God to say, God, you've given me so much. I'm going to take this day off. And yes, I could have, used it on a Friday to go do whatever, but I'm going to use it to recognize this. And also, I think a lot of our European conferences actually have a lot of holidays. Like in the UK, they get like Michaelmas off. They call them weird things now. They all call them, it's like spring bank holiday and late spring bank holiday, which like talk about the war on Christmas, talk about the war on Michaelmas, right?
Fight the true fight.
Fight the true fight. It's still called Christmas Day in the federal docket, but if you go to the UK bank holiday website, it's just like, there's no meaning to a lot of these holidays. It's like, whatever, fall break holiday, which bank holidays, a whole nother economic concept to talk about, because I'm going to take a little sabbatical here. The bank holiday, most people think of it means that like, oh, it's the day the banks are closed. But when there were runs on banks, when people would have, all this, because banks don't actually have enough cash for all of the deposits through fractional reserve banking, whole other thing, they would say, all right, we're declaring a bank holiday. Nobody comes to the bank. Let the emotions cool and then reopen. But one of the powers that the chairman of the Federal Reserve had, I don't know if it's the chairman explicitly, but the Federal Reserve System has, is they can declare bank holidays, as I think the president can and others, if there's a financial crisis. So I'm always like, whenever they raise interest rates, everyone's upset, give everybody the day off. Say, we're going to take a bank holiday. But also the state, like, in DC, all right, around the inauguration day, that's a holiday for government employees. And then national days of mourning. So when there's a state funeral in DC, that's a day off. Which is, I think, a way that our secular world acknowledges we seem to need to demarcate work from events of significance, but we can do that as well. And so understanding that on holy days of obligation, we should treat those like little Sundays, right? And spend it with family, spend it in leisure, spend it in works of mercy, not spend it just like, oh, it's a Tuesday, but I go to mass at 7:30. I mean, obviously there's extenuating circumstances and the church understands, but it seems that that's the ideal that we should be striving for.
Yeah, I agree.
Wow. I think we should that's a high note. And then just to close it out because everyone's wondering, what's the fifth precept of the church? You shall observe the prescribed days of fasting and abstinence, which I think we could do a whole nother podcast on fasting and abstinence and what that means.
There's only 2 days of the year that's prescribed. It's Ash Wednesday and Good Friday for fasting and abstinence. But the United States, you should abstain from meat every Friday of the year, not just Fridays in Lent. And if you do not abstain from meat, you have to do another work of penance. That's what the church says. That's what the United States says. So,
and that's, to recognize that Christ
Charles
died
and I have
Friday.
a back and forth debate about which Fridays you're actually exempt from. Believe it or not, you're more conservative than I am on that.
I follow the most militant disciplines that I can find that the church has ever prescribed. And I don't know if I have it here, but I have a devotional book from like 1909 that was in our family, and it's Manual of Catholic Devotion. And it says, you shall refrain from consuming, beast or fowl all Fridays of the year unless Christmas falls on a Friday. So that's what I believe. Now, don't get me wrong. It's a work in progress on the Friday meat thing. I'm pretty good at it, right? Last time you came down to DC, Friday, no meat, but every so often there's like either something slips up, but it's easy now because there's vegetarians, vegans, all this gluten-free people, right? You can find a way to
do it. Yeah. All right.
So the pseudo sixth precept, real quick.
Sixth precept.
It's not a precept, but it just has another line. It says, the faithful also have the duty of providing for the material needs of the church, each according to his abilities. So it doesn't say it's a sixth precept, but it's completely unrelated to fasting and abstinence. So I think that's kind of a sixth precept.
No, but that is that does come up. I feel like you should be the one to say this, but you should give money to the church or to charity. And that is a great way to end on a very controversial.
I think we do a whole podcast on tithing and charity and everything. But yes, so if you remember nothing, enjoy your Sundays, go to mass, arrive early, stay for the dismissal, treat holy days like holy days. And, and our tagline.
Use your PTO obligation.
What's my say? What is my PTO?
Use your PTO
on holy days. Yeah. Use your PTO. So on holy days. It's a good goal, good challenge. All right, Father.
All right. Yeah. Until next time, work hard and pray harder.